And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Now we're going to take a look at Aloha, the Spirit of Hawaii. This is a game from Blue Panther Games. Blue Panther Games, I've played and reviewed their games in the past. They've mostly been abstract strategy style games made from a wood laser printer. This one certainly uses that, but this also adds cards. It's basically I would call it a Euro game in how it plays. It's a game that follows the history of Hawaii. You can tell that the designer certainly put a lot of research into it. Is that fun? It could be. Let's see. At the beginning of the game, you're going to set these islands up here like thus, and it really doesn't matter that you set them up in this order other than a historical flavor, and that's the whole focus of this game is the history of Hawaii. And in fact, what you'll be doing is you have a prologue. It's like a story over here, the timeline prologue, chapter 1, 2, 3, epilogue. And that just shows you what phase of the game you're in. And you also have a place to keep track of how many points each player has over here, and also how many actions they have. Players are going to start with 20 Hawaiians on one of these islands. They will have Hawaiians in their colors. These Hawaiians come in denominations of 1 and 5 on these wooden discs. You'll put them out there. Players also have these outriggers which act as action discs. And each part of the game acts a little bit differently, and so it will take you a bit to go through. For example, in the prologue, you have 2 actions, but after that, you're going to get actions for each island where you have people. You'll get actions for having the most people on the island and from controlling the king. And you'll be able to use these actions for different things. One thing you'll be able to use action for is simply to recruit warriors. And you'll move your piece in the track here to have warriors. At the end of the first few eras, everyone's going to roll dice. Whoever has the most warriors rolls 3 dice. Everyone else rolls 2. And they add the number of warriors that they have to that roll. And whoever has the most becomes the king. And then each person who controls each island will become the chief of that island. And so you'll get cards that are worth 1 point for the chief of each island, and 2 points if you're the king, or in a later turn of the game, the queen. And so you will be doing that. And other actions you can take are moving people from one island to another. You can, if you are on an island, you can take the resources of that island. For example, that gives you 2 Aloha. The one up here gives you another Hawaiian. Up there gives you commerce. And these are all kept track of on the board over here as you take each one that you get from the island. And even, for example, down here, controlling Hawaii will give you 2 warriors in chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 3, it gives you 2 votes. Then, each chapter of the game, 4 of these cards are turned over from the chapter, and since there are so many cards involved in the game, you'll always have different things available. And these cards can sometimes be a negative event like smallpox outbreak, which causes anybody on certain islands to lose Hawaiian, but usually they are just a card that you can take as one of your actions. You just have to have somebody on the highlighted island that's shown on the card. So for example, if I take this one and I'm on one of those islands, then I can either take 1 Hawaiian, or I can lose 1 commerce and roll a 4-sided die and take that many Hawaiians. Which one am I going to choose? Other times it might be simpler here. I just lose commerce and I take 3 Aloha. I will say that the symbols for commerce and Hawaiians are awfully similar in a quick look, and people always forgot which one meant which, but what have you. At the end of chapter 3, before the epilogue, people are able to rearrange some of their resources, trade them for each other. But votes is what's going to matter, because there no longer is a king, rather there is an elected governor. And so here we have William Quinn, who some people said was not actually named Romney, but what have you. And then you have different people. And you're going to take all the cards that you've collected from controlling the different islands over the game, and those will be worth points, as well as any points that you've scored during the game for various things. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner. If you forget how you score, there's a scoring sheet. And this scoring sheet shows you, like, for example, you get the points for having highs in different tracks, points for a king or queen. And so the scoring is different in Prologue, Chapter 1, 2, 3, and then the Epilogue. So Aloha, the spirit of Hawaii. There's a lot of good things going for it, but let's knock some of the bad things out first, I suppose. One is, I mentioned that there was a little bit of graphical, confusion that I had. Not only that, but the game itself, when I played it, people said, is this a prototype? And I said, no, it's not a prototype. I do play a lot of prototypes. This is better quality than a prototype, but you might call it a really nice prototype, but it certainly feels unpolished. Because the wooden counters don't have stuff on both sides of them, and the cards aren't the best of quality, and the artwork on the islands just looks like someone colored it in with a marker. It just doesn't have the look of a professional game, doesn't have the feel of a professional game. So keep that in mind. But the game itself plays, I think, fairly interestingly. I really enjoy it. I mean, it's not a heavy game. The choices you make are pretty simple. Why move them there? I think it plays best as a 4-player game. I played it with less than, I played it with 3. I don't know if it does cover 2. I have not played a 2 game. And the box says 60 to 90 minutes. But I mean, once you know what you're doing, this is an hour game easy. It's simply, what resources am I going to fight for? Am I going to try to go for the warriors? There's a little bit of luck in the dice, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. I want this, I want this, I want this. I'm going to move here. I'm going to take over these islands. And I like how each card brings in an actual historical event, and that might have some bearing on the game itself. And it is interesting to watch the history of Hawaii as it changes from a monarchy to a state of America, for better, for worse. I know there's a lot of certainly feelings in Hawaii about how that happened and why it happened, but this game isn't making any sort of judgments. It's just saying it happened, and it's following the history line. So if you're teaching the history of Hawaii, this is certainly a good game, but it's a fun game in its own right. Not the best packaging in the world, but the artwork on the cards is good. There's a lot of interesting ideas here. Certainly one that you should check out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door!